In this video, we'll be going over some of the best magic items you might consider taking as a paladin. These items can be those that either help your game plan as a formidable tank with high AC and defenses, those which help you deal a ton of extra damage alongside your smites, or somewhere in between. Keep in mind this video goes after the base 2014 rules of the game and not the 2024 changes. And first up on this list, we have the Pearl of Power from the Dungeons Master's Guide. This uncommon generic magic item requires attunement in order to use, and is an excellent tool for spellcasters, as it allows them to use an action to regain an expended spell slot up to 3rd level once per day. This combos especially well with how slow Paladin's magic progression is, along with the fact that they can only learn up to 5th level spells, so the more spell slots they have, the better. While other spellcasters might be able to make better use of the Pearl of Power by allowing them to cast additional Fireball or Haste, the Paladin gets a unique way of making use of it by allowing them one additional Divine Smite a day. Divine Smite is a Paladin's bread and butter class feature, which allows them to expend spell slots for a bit of extra radiant damage whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack. Expending a 1st level spell slot allows you to deal an additional 2d8 radiant damage, and every spell slot above that increases the damage by 1d8 up to a max of 5d8. Undead and fiend creatures also take 1d8 of additional radiant damage up to a maximum of 6d8. And since this feature isn't on a once per turn restriction, you can just spam Divine Smites every time you hit something. However, this is a surefire way of running out of spell slots very quickly, which is where the Pearl of Power can come into play. While it does only restore one spell slot, it does mean that you can at least have an emergency 4d8 radiant damage in your back pocket whenever you need it, or if you really need to cast a spell that you no longer have spell slots for because of all that smiting you've been doing, such as using a Cure Wounds to pick up a downed ally, or Zone of Truth if you find yourself interrogating a key NPC. Regardless, the Pearl of Power sits at number 10 on this list because, while it is a great magic item for paladins, it is a magic item that helps every spellcaster, and doesn't provide much more of a benefit than it would if, say, a wizard attuned to the Pearl of Power. One extra Divine Smite also isn't going to be making too much of a difference in your campaign overall, but does allow for a little bit of extra flexibility to the player by allowing them to have a backup slot for whatever situation they might need it for. That being said, the Pearl of Power does make for an excellent starting point in terms of what kinds of magic items we'll be looking at, so it sits at number 10. And at number 9, we have the Ring of Amity from the Bigby Presents Glory of the Giant sourcebook. This is a very rare ring which requires you to attune to it in order to gain its benefits. When you attune to it, you gain the ability to form a magical bond with one willing creature that you touch, which lasts until you either end the bond with the creature using a bonus action, bond with another creature, or end up on a different plane of existence. While bonded, you gain 2 solid benefits out of it. The first benefit allows the bonded creature to regain all hit points that you also regain whenever you're subjected to an effect that restores hit points. This is particularly worthy of note because it allows you to effectively double the amount of hit points you can restore with a feature like Lay on Hands. At 11th level, for example, you have up to 55 total hit points you can restore. But if you use all 55 on yourself, the bonded creature also regains 55 hit points, which effectively means you restore 110 hit points with one use of Lay on Hands. Of course, that's just maximum value, which might not always be available to you unless you and another creature have both taken large amounts of damage. Still, though, the fact that you can restore another creature's hit points by restoring your own is invaluable as a paladin, considering their all-in-one kit of having defensive abilities, offensive ones, and can also play support from time to time. The other benefit you get from this ring is the ability to use your reaction whenever the bonded creature hits something while you're within 60 feet of the bonded creature to turn that hit into a critical hit, which is insanely useful if you've bonded with another paladin or even a rogue, which likes to roll 20 plus math rocks every time they critically hit with their sneak attack. Although you can only use this ability once per day, it creates a synergy between you and another creature unlike any other magic item in the game that can help you not only protect them and yourself, but also assist them in their own damage and offensive capabilities whenever you feel necessary. Your rogue went first and landed a hit on the big bad evil guy? Make it a critical hit to start off the fight with a huge head start in terms of damage. Your cleric wants to heal the whole party with a mass Cure Wounds? Well, not only does your bonded creature gain the initial healing from being hit with the mass Cure Wounds, they also now gain healing bonus equal to the amount that you were healed for as well, which is just less overall healing the cleric would have to do. This can also combine well with spells like Aura of Vitality, where you can spend your bonus action each turn to heal a creature within a 30-foot radius for 2d6 hit points by healing yourself, which thereby heals the bonded creature as well. Overall, a nice item to have, as being able to sustain yourself and another creature is extremely useful on its own, especially since Lay on Hands is arguably the single best source of healing for the majority of the game, while also giving you one of the few ways to directly affect how much damage one of your allies can do at any given time, making the Ring of Amity worthy of being on this list, albeit only at number 9. And at number 8, we have Snicker-snack from the Wild Beyond the Witchlight sourcebook. This is a legendary greatsword which requires attunement by a non-evil creature, and comes with a healthy amount of beneficial effects for a paladin. For starters, it's a +3 greatsword, so it already comes with a bonus to attack and damage rolls made by it, and ignores resistance to slashing damage. It also counts as a vorpal sword, meaning it can decapitate a creature's head whenever you roll a nat 20 on an attack roll with the weapon, instantly killing the creature if it cannot live without a head. A creature that's immune to slashing damage, doesn't have or need a head, has legendary actions, or if it's a creature that the DM decides has a head that's too big to be cut off with this weapon, is immune to the decapitation effect of Snicker-snacker and takes 68 slashing damage instead from the hit. Additionally, while you're attuned to Snicker-snack, you have proficiency with greatswords and can use your charisma modifier in place of your strength for attack and damage rolls made with the weapon. All in all, this is almost a carbon copy of the Blade of Avernus, minus the beneficial and detrimental properties rolled when obtaining the weapon, as well as some other abilities that are included in that weapon. However, what sets Snicker-snacker apart most from Blade of Avernus is the fact that the Blade of Avernus does not allow you to use your charisma rather than your strength for attack and damage rolls, which can make Snicker-snacker a much better weapon to use for some paladins. See, paladins are one of the few classes in the game that can make their secondary stat just as useful as their primary stat. Usually, a paladin might want to prioritize their strength to get the most damage out of their weapons and divine smites. However, there is a unique case where a paladin might want to prioritize their charisma purely to increase the effectiveness of their aura protection class feature they get at 6th level, allowing the paladin to create a 10 feet aura that increases to 30 feet at 18th level, which grants a bonus to their own and friendly creatures' saving throws within the aura equal to the paladin's charisma modifier. So if you boost your charisma to a 20 as soon as possible, by 6th level, you and all of your friends will have a flat +5 bonus to succeeding any saving throw your way, which is an incredibly powerful tool that only paladins get to have. However, by prioritizing charisma, this naturally means you'll be sacrificing some strength along the way. So, having any option to use your charisma stat as your attacking stat instead is why Snicker-snack is so amazing, especially on top of the fact that it's just a better vorpal sword. However, there is one downside that prevents Snicker-snacker from taking a higher spot on this list, and that has to do with its sentient nature, along with having a craving for blood of evil dragons, urging the wielder to seek them out and slay them. This weapon is also easy to displease, as missing 3 attack rolls in a row with this weapon automatically causes Snicker-snacker to end its attunement with you. Luckily, you can attempt to regain the sword's trust after finishing a long rest by making a contestant charisma check against Snicker-snacker, instantly restoring your attunement with the weapon if you succeed. Unfortunately, this is the only way to restore your attunement to the item, so you have to be really careful not to upset the legendary Snicker-snacker mid-battle. Fortunately, it does say you have to miss attack rolls 3 times in a row, so as long as you manage to hit something with your 3rd attack, then all is well. Still, if it weren't for this one major drawback, Snicker-snack would definitely take a much higher spot on this list. But for now, it gets to rest easy, knowing it gets to sit comfortably at the number 8 spot. And at number 7, we have the Necklace of Prayer Beads from the DMG. This rare necklace requires attunement by a cleric, druid, or paladin, and comes with the 1d4 plus 2 magic beads that hold different spells depending on the type of bead that it's attached to. There are 6 types of beads, and the DM gets to decide which ones are on the necklace, or they can determine randomly. Each bead contains a spell that you can cast from it as a bonus action while wearing the necklace, and if the spell requires a spell save DC, then you can use your own for the casting of that spell. Once a bead spell has been cast, you can't use it again until the next dawn. As for the types of beads you can get onto the necklace, there's the Bead of Blessing, which comes with the Bless spell, Curing, which comes with the Cure Wounds or Lesser Restoration, Favor, which contains Greater Restoration, Smiting, which has Bind and Smite, Summons, which has Planner Ally, and Windwalking, which contains Windwalk. And since you can have more than a single type of bead, there's always a good chance that you can get multiple castings of each spell. Planner Ally and Windwalk are definitely the best spells you can obtain on this list, but each spell only has a 5% chance of coming with the necklace, only being available upon rolling a 19 or 20 respectively on a d20 when determining the spells you can cast. Meanwhile, Bless, Cure Wounds, Lesser Restoration have a 30% chance of being rolled onto your necklace, which are all very good spells in their own right. Being able to cast any of these spells as a bonus action specifically, when they normally cost an action, is amazing since Paladins don't always have much to do with their bonus actions as other classes. Bless is particularly great because it's a first level concentration spell which grants up to 3 creatures within 30 feet of you a bonus of 1d4 to all attack rolls and saving throws that they make for the next minute, which can turn the tide of a battle very easily by giving you those little extra boosts to hit a creature that you would otherwise miss, or make a saving throw that you would otherwise fail. Meanwhile, Cure Wounds at 2nd level is great, as that's just a free 2d8 plus your spellcasting modifier as a healing bonus action once per day, only beaten out by this 60-foot range of healing word, rather than Cure Wounds' range of touch. Lesser and Greater Restoration are also great spells to have, while Branding Smite is excellent for dealing a bit of extra radiant damage on top of your Divine Smites. And even if you already have access to Branding Smite, there's no harm in having extra charges of it for free. Planner Ally lets you summon and potentially enlist the help of Celestial, Elemental, or Fiend in exchange for some form of payment, be that gold, or a quest, or a task, for instance. Normally, this spell has a cast time of 10 minutes, but with a cast time of 1 bonus action for being able to be cast from the necklace, you could even potentially enlist the help of whatever you summon to assist you in the middle of battle if you really wanted to. Regardless, a lot of what you can do with Planner Ally definitely depends on how much your DM wants to play out the negotiations. Lastly, Windwalk is an incredible utility spell, which can let you and up to 10 willing creatures assume a gaseous form for 8 hours, granting all affected creatures a fly speed of 300 feet, with the only actions you're able to do is the dash action, or to revert to their normal forms. This is amazing for getting your party inside a well-guarded fortress by quickly flying through a small enough crack or opening in the outer walls, for example. However, being able to cast a Windwalk as a bonus action rather than its normal casting time of 1 minute, it might even prove to be a decent escape option in case you and your party find yourselves low on resources or health and need to make a quick retreat. At the end of the day though, what makes the necklace of prayer beads so great for Paladins is the fact that it gives them plenty of potential options to use their bonus action that won't interfere with their normal gameplay, while providing spells that don't get in the way of their spell slots either. So there's more room to throw out smites while still having some basic spells like Bless and Cure Wounds to throw out every now and then. And unlike other magic items like the Necklace of Fireballs, where if you expend the spell it's lost forever, the spells and the prayer beads all recharge on the next dawn, allowing a lot of recursion from this magic item, making it a perfect candidate for the number 7 spot on this list. And at number 6, we have the Amulet of the Devout from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This is a magic item that can only be attuned to by a cleric or paladin, and comes in a +1, +2, or +3 variant, which grants you those same pluses as a bonus to spell attack rolls and saving throw DCs of your spells. Additionally, every variant of the amulet allows you to use your Channel Divinity feature without expending one of the feature's uses once per day. This is incredibly useful for Paladins since they only ever get 1 use of their Channel Divinity feature per short or long rest. This can be incredibly useful if you're playing an Oath subclass that possesses multiple Channel Divinity features, like Oath of the Crown's Champion Challenge and Turn the Tide features, so that you don't have to decide between which 2 you really want to use, and provides better flexibility between your Channel Divinity uses. Another important thing to note is that the Amulet of Devout is one of the only ways to increase your already lowered spell save DCs for being a half caster, usually as a result of focusing more on strength in your spellcasting stat of charisma in most cases, which can make a lot of your spells feel better to use over smiting since they might actually land. This also makes stacking smite spells with the Divine Smite a great burst option, as the higher save DC means more of your smite spell's secondary effects will start to land a lot more reliably, such as Wrathful Smite's Frighten effect that it can pose on a creature that you hit with it. That being said, what prevents the Amulet of Devout from being higher in this list is due to the fact that while it does basically everything it can to improve the Paladin's ability to be a Paladin, it does lack one crucial component. Even though the Amulet does increase your spell save DC, it only does so for spells that you cast, which your Channel Divinities do not count as. This can make things a little bit confusing, as there could be a situation where your Channel Divinity and your spells would have different save targets that you now have to keep track of, which can cause some unnecessary headaches. It's also worth considering that with how middling to amazing certain Channel Divinity features can get, it's a real shame that you can't make them land more reliably, given how few of them that you can cast per rest. However, it is understandable that this was the way Wizards of the Coast chose to balance this item, since the Amulet of Devout can be worn by clerics too, who can have a lot more uses of Channel Divinity, so it's possible they just didn't want clerics to have an insane consistency on some of their own Channel Divinity features. Unfortunately, as a result, this kind of leaves Paladins high and dry in that regard. But at least they get to have one extra use of their own Channel Divinity feature to help make up for the lack of bonus save DC. And at number 5, we have the Cloak of Displacement from the DMG. This rare cloak grants you the powerful benefit of imposing disadvantage on all incoming attack rolls made against you until you take damage, become incapacitated, restrained, or otherwise unable to move, wherein you'll be unable to benefit from the cloak until the start of your next turn. However, despite this downside, the Cloak of Displacement is still powerful enough as an item because of how well it shuts down attackers by giving them disadvantage on their attacks right off the bat. In some cases, this can warp encounters in such a way that a paladin with a high enough AC just becomes untouchable, since the cloak inherently lowers the chance of critical hits landing due to the nature of disattack rolls always choosing the lower numbers. The fact that this magic item is only rare tier as an item is a little bit ridiculous when you realize that rare items technically start appearing as soon as 5th level, making it available early enough to actually see the cloak in most campaigns. However, because of how strong the cloak is, it's also not uncommon for DMs to either raise the price of the cloak significantly, or just not include it in their game to begin with. But the cloak is not without weaknesses. As said before, if you take any amount of damage while wearing it, you can't benefit from its effects until the start of your next turn. So even if you take some damage from a stray fireball or even a magic missile, your cloak is just shut off for the rest of the round, which can happen fairly often since most spells cast tend to require saving throws only to have the damage, not mitigate it completely. There's also the fact that there are various forms of crowd control options that enemies might have access to, such as hold person, web, entangle, etc., that they can also use to keep your cloak from being active. That being said, while the cloak is certainly an incredible item to get, especially at lower levels, Paladins don't actually benefit as much from the cloak as they would other entries on this list, but it is certainly powerful enough to earn a higher spot on this list anyway. And at number 4, we have Bigby's Beneficent Bracelet from Bigby's Presents Glory of the Giants. Bigby's Beneficent Bracelet is an artifact which requires attunement and bestows a bountiful number of benefits to the wearer, by granting one minor beneficial property, one major, while also instilling one minor detrimental property in the process. These properties are basically random effects that come with most, if not all, artifacts, and add a bit of randomness to what they grant party members. Minor beneficial properties can be something like immunity to certain conditions, or the ability to cast one free spell per day, up to 3rd level if you're lucky. Major beneficial properties are things like an extra 1d6 damage to your weapon while attuned to it, to hit point regeneration, to outright stat increases while attuned to the artifact. Meanwhile, detrimental properties are there to provide a small downside or deterrent to the artifact, making you think twice about using it. Luckily, the bracelet only comes with a minor detrimental effect, which has a wide range of choices as mundane as gaining a bit of weight, but can be as debilitating as having disadvantage on saving throws against spells. However, these properties are definitely not what makes Bigby's Beneficent Bracelet a great item for Paladins, as pretty much every artifact comes with some form of randomness to their properties. Because along with these random properties, Bigby's Beneficent Bracelet also allows you to cast Mage Hand while wearing it, which can be used for Mage Hand shenanigans, of course. You can also focus and channel the bracelet for 1 minute, and create a spectral copy of a large or small non-magical object that can be interacted with normally like the original object, but cannot take damage or be dispelled unless hit with a disintegration spell, destroying it immediately. The object also lasts for up to 8 hours, or until you dismiss it as an action. While not so helpful in most cases, it might be useful for replicating a master key or a battering ram if you need to gain access to a restricted area of a building or hideout, or create a hiding spot by replicating a large statue or box if you want to be a bit stealthy. However, the main draw of this artifact is the ability to cast Bigby's Hand at 9th level once per day. Normally, this would cause problems with other spells in your arsenal, since Bigby's Hand normally uses concentration, so you wouldn't be able to concentrate on smite spells or bless or anything of the sort. However, with Bigby's Beneficent Bracelet, casting Bigby's Hand in this way does not require concentration, meaning you're free to concentrate normally on any of your other spells as you normally would. The reason why this is so good, however, is not just the fact that you can cast Bigby's Hand, but the fact that you can cast it at a level you normally couldn't, at 9th level. This basically gives you a free 12d8 force damage with the hand's clenched fist option every turn as a bonus action, while also having a huge imposing hand that has hit points equal to your own, essentially counting as an extra body on the board that can just dominate the battlefield with its presence. The hand also has access to the ability to shove creatures very far based on your spellcasting modifier, grapple and squeeze targets for 2d6 plus your spellcasting modifier per turn, which is turned to 10d6 plus spellcasting mod at 9th level, and interpose itself between you and another creature, making it harder for them to get to you by creating half cover for you, and acts as difficult terrain for the target if they successfully attempt to move through the hand. Overall, this artifact is a very powerful item for paladins to have, not just because it allows them to cast a 9th level spell, but also because it allows them to do what clerics can already do with spiritual weapon, summoning a non-concentration entity that deals damage as a bonus action every turn, except much better. Even if it does cost an action to summon in the first place, you can still open up with 12d8 force damage as a clenched fist, which is, no doubt, one of the best damage options you'll have even at the level you'd be able to acquire these bracelets. While this might be one of the best damaging options you can have for any character, we do have to knock out points for the chance of the bracelet coming with a dreaded effect of having disadvantage in all saving throws against spells, since this could end up turning away players that might consider using it for the ultra-powerful Bigby's hand alone. Despite that, however, Bigby's Beneficent Bracelet is definitely the best generic option for a paladin to take, but not quite the best paladin option overall. And at number 3, we have the Tome of Leadership and Influence from the DMG. This very rare book is one that increases your charisma score by 2, as well as the maximum amount of charisma you can have for that stat. So if your max is 20, as it usually is by default, the new maximum you can have is 22. Having a flat increase to your charisma helps a paladin in ways we've already covered. That extra +1 bonus makes your spell save DC and spell attack rolls better at landing, as well as increasing the bonus protection provided by your aura protection. So there really isn't anything new to go over. It's just a very solid increase in one of your main stats that can make your allies absolutely love you for having an extra +6 to all their saving throws. Combine this high charisma stat with Bless, and everyone ends up with a +7 to a +10 bonus to their saving throws, with a nice bump to their attack rolls as an icing on the cake. And if you have some way to make your charisma your main attack stat, such as through another magic item like the Snicker-snack, or taking 3 levels of Hexblade Warlock to allow yourself to use the charisma mod for your greatsword attacks, then the Tome of Leadership and Influence becomes even stronger and the best stat upgrade for paladins in general. The fact that it only affects charisma and doesn't really do anything else is why it takes number 3 spot on this list. But even that's not something to sneeze at, since any increase to your charisma score influences so many helpful features that it has to take a high spot on this list no matter what. And at number 2, we have the Sword of Answering from the DMG. This legendary longsword comes in all different kinds of flavors that do the same thing, but requires a different alignment to attune to. For example, the Sword of Answering Concluder requires a creature that's a lawful neutral to attune to it in order to gain its benefits. As for what the Sword of Answering itself does, is it grants you a +3 bonus to your attack and damage rolls, just like other magical weapons of its tier. However, you also gain a unique reaction that you can use whenever a creature deals damage to you to make one melee attack with it. But what makes this reaction attack unique is you first have advantage on this attack, and whenever you deal damage, the attack ignores any damage immunities or resistances the target has. This means that you can use this in tandem with your divine smites and still deal full damage even if the big bad evil guy were to resist or even be immune to any form of radiant damage. For how fancy most legendary items tend to be, the Sword of Answering is fairly simple, yet effective with a unique mechanic that isn't found anywhere else, since there isn't anything else in the game that allows you to outright ignore a creature's immunity to a damage type, just things that sometimes treat immunities as resistances. That being said, the reason why this item only takes number 2 spot, rather than number 1, is because it only comes in longsword variant, which is a bit of a downgrade if you were already using a greatsword to begin with, but not by much in the grand scheme of things. Actually, it could even be a damage upgrade if you manage to get the reaction attack off consistently enough. And being that the Sword of Answering is a longsword, you do have the option to use a shield with it if you want to forsake a bit more damage. There's also the downside that you must be a specific alignment in order to attune to the weapon in the first place, meaning that if your alignment ever changes, then you might end up losing the ability to use the blade until the situation gets resolved, whether it be by fixing your own alignment, or finding a new Sword of Answering that matches your own alignment. Regardless, the Sword of Answering definitely is one of the best offensive options you can take as a paladin, as it sports more ways to take advantage of your Divine Smite while boasting a pretty unique mechanic no other magic item really gets. And at number 1, we have the legendary Holy Avenger from the DMG. This legendary blade can only be attuned to by a paladin, which sort of makes this blade uniquely qualified for this list to begin with. It can come in many different flavors, like a longsword, short sword, or even a greatsword, which is usually the go-to option in many cases. Along with gaining a +3 bonus to attack and damage rolls with the weapon, the Holy Avenger also caramelizes undeads and fiends for an extra 2d10 radiant damage each time you hit, which messes considerably well with the Paladin's Divine Smites, which already gain an added layer of a tasty 1d8 goodness to its radiant damage. But the sweet nectar of this weapon comes from a 10-foot aura that coats the party with sugary protection from spells and magical effects in the form of spell resistance, meaning that you and all friendly creatures gain advantage on saving throws against spells and magical effects. This aura does eventually grow and expands to a 30-foot radius if you have 17 or more levels of Paladin, which mixes very well with the aura protection, kind of like peanut butter and chocolate. The aura protection provides your party with a bonus to their saving throws equal to your charisma, while the Holy Avenger's aura makes those saving throws into advantage, so long as those saving throws are being made against spells and other magical effects. Ultimately, while the Sword of Answering makes for an excellent offensive weapon in the Paladin's arsenal, the Holy Avenger functions as the opposite, by being the best defensive option a Paladin can have, as spells and magical effects become more common at higher tiers of play. And given how strong aura protection is as a tool that benefits everyone, it's no wonder the Holy Avenger proudly stands at the top of this list.